The phone call from my housekeeper came just as I was merging onto the freeway, her voice a frantic whisper that made the blood in my veins turn to ice. "Ma'am, please, don't pull into the driveway. Stop the car and look at the security feed." My knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "What is it, Rosa?" "Just, please look." There's a primal instinct that understands danger long before the conscious mind catches up. My body had already tensed, my foot easing off the accelerator before I could even process the fear in her voice. I took the next exit, pulling into the deserted lot of a shuttered diner, the neon sign buzzing faintly overhead. I had just dropped my in-laws off at the airport less than 30 minutes prior. My mother-in-law, Patricia, had given me a hug that lasted a beat too long. "You take care of yourself, Sarah," she'd murmured. At the time, I'd taken it as a rare moment of maternal warmth. I was 45, a major in the United States Army, stationed at Fort Hood. I had spent 2 decades learning to compartmentalize, to stay operational when everything around me was falling apart. I'd handled supply chain nightmares, personnel crises, and the quiet desperation of soldiers far from home. But sitting in that parking lot, phone in hand, I felt the walls of my carefully constructed world begin to tremble. I opened the home security application on my phone. The first camera showed the porch, empty and still. The second showed the kitchen, spotless, the way Rosa always left it. Then I tapped the feed for the living room. My husband was there. He was standing by the sofa, his hands wrapped around another woman's waist, kissing her with a familiar intimacy that spoke of routine, not impulse. She was wearing my favorite cashmere cardigan, the one I kept draped over the armchair in the bedroom. A half-empty bottle of wine, the expensive Bordeaux my commanding officer had given me for my promotion, sat on the coffee table between 2 glasses. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I just watched the screen. Then I saw the woman laugh, her fingers tracing his jawline. My husband smiled in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years. My phone slipped, and I fumbled to catch it before it clattered onto the floorboard. "Rosa," I said, my voice a low, controlled monotone when I called her back. "Where are you now?" "In the pantry, ma'am. I came back for my medicine. I heard voices. I thought you'd come home early." "Can they see you?" "No." Her voice was trembling. "Ma'am, leave. Just go through the garage and don't take anything but your purse." "Rosa, listen to me." I steadied my voice. "This is not your fault. I need you to get out of there safely." I saved the video clip to my phone and sent a copy to my personal email address. Training took over. Collect intelligence. Establish the facts. Don't engage the enemy on their terms. I was about to start the engine when movement on the living room screen caught my eye. A blue suitcase rolled into the frame. The same blue suitcase I had watched Patricia wheel through the airport security line. Then Patricia herself stepped into view, laughing. My first thought was that I was looking at an old recording, a glitch in the system. Maybe she had forgotten something. Maybe her flight was delayed. But then I saw the timestamp in the corner of the screen, 11:47 a.m. live. I watched Patricia set the suitcase beside the sofa, watched Daniel drape an arm around her shoulders. The other woman said something I couldn't hear, and Patricia grinned. "Well," she announced to the room, her voice loud and clear, "I'm glad that's over with." Daniel laughed. "She never suspects a thing." The other woman laughed too. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just an affair anymore. It was a conspiracy. His parents knew. They were part of this. Rosa had been right. I forced myself to keep watching. The army had taught me a valuable lesson. Patience reveals the enemy's full plan. Patricia looked toward the kitchen. "Did Rosa leave?" "I think so," Daniel answered. "She was done for the day." The other woman frowned. "Are you sure she didn't see me?" Daniel waved a dismissive hand. "She's practically deaf. She doesn't pay attention to anything." I nearly laughed out loud. Rosa had probably paid more attention to my life than I had. I called her again immediately. She answered on the first ring. "I'm driving, ma'am." "Good, Rosa, I'm sorry you had to see that. You have nothing to apologize for. I should have told you sooner." I closed my eyes. Sooner. There was a long, heavy pause. I've seen that woman before. My chest tightened. How many times? I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 times. 6 or 7 times, that wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern. "Did you ever see anything inappropriate?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "No, mister." Morgan always told me she was a client. I believed him. But today, your mother-in-law hugged her. The detail was a knife in my gut. Patricia hadn't just discovered the affair, she'd been welcoming it. I hung up and replayed the footage from the beginning. This time, I wasn't watching Daniel or the woman. I was scanning the room. I saw coffee cups, 3 of them. A pastry box from a local bakery. Fresh. Someone had planned this little morning gathering. Then I switched to the driveway camera. At exactly 11:39 a.m., a black SUV pulled in. Patricia and her husband, Robert, got out. There was no airport shuttle, no rideshare. Robert opened the trunk. Instead of large suitcases for a 2-week cruise, there were only 2 small carry-on bags. The large blue suitcase had been a prop. They had never intended to get on a plane. I zoomed in on the grainy image of my father-in-law shaking his son's hand, then hugging the other woman. It wasn't a polite hug. It was a welcoming one. The sight brought a memory to the surface, sharp and painful. 3 months prior, Patricia had canceled a family dinner, claiming she and Robert were going to Waco for the weekend. Daniel had stayed home from church that morning, citing a business meeting. I wondered now if they'd all been together that weekend. How many holidays? How many birthdays? How many times had I walked into a room and everyone had just stopped talking? My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Daniel. "Hope the drive back is safe. Love you." I stared at the screen, a chill running down my spine. Then I typed back, "Just leaving Austin, see you tonight." 3 dots appeared. "Sounds great, can't wait." I looked back at the camera feed. Daniel was smiling as he sent the message. Then he kissed the woman again. Patricia walked back into the frame carrying a thick manila envelope. Written across the front in black marker was one word: attorney. I sat in my truck for another 10 minutes, the air conditioning struggling against the July heat. Outside, the world went on. A family piled into a minivan. An elderly couple walked their dog. Normal life continued around me while mine quietly shattered. I took a deep breath and called my battalion executive officer. "Sir, this is Major Davis." "Sarah, are you on your way back?" "I'm running into a family emergency, sir." I'll have to join the briefing remotely. There was a brief pause. "You've never asked for special treatment before. Take care of it, Major." "Thank you, sir." I hung up and immediately called the divorce attorney a colleague had recommended. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said, "Ms. Brooks is booked solid for the rest of the day." "This is an emergency," I said, my voice clipped. "My husband doesn't know I've discovered his plans yet." 30 seconds later, the receptionist came back on the line. "Ms. Brooks can see you at 2:00. Ms. Brooks's office overlooked the river. She was a composed woman, probably in her late 50s, with a calm, assessing gaze that made me feel like I was being studied. She listened without interruption while I showed her the footage. When Daniel kissed the other woman, she remained expressionless. When Patricia walked in, she just folded her hands. When the manila envelope appeared, she leaned forward. "Pause it." She studied the screen. "Can you zoom in on that?" I enlarged the frame. "Attorney." She nodded slowly. "They're not just having an affair, Major. They're building a case." That sentence landed with the force of a blow. She slid a yellow legal pad across the table to me. "Think like an investigator, not a wife. When did things change?" "We started building a timeline." "When did Daniel start working late?" When did the bank statements stop arriving in the mail? When did Patricia suddenly take an interest in organizing our financial files? One memory came back after another. 6 months ago, Daniel had insisted we switch to paperless billing to save clutter. I'd agreed without a thought. Patricia had offered to keep copies of our important documents in her safe because she had a fireproof box. It had seemed thoughtful. Now it seemed predatory. Linda circled both events on the pad. They were laying the groundwork. Before I left, Linda gave me one clear instruction: don't confront him. He's expecting you to get emotional. Don't give him the satisfaction. I don't know if I can pretend. You have to. If they think you're oblivious, they'll make a mistake. A patient woman gathering evidence is the most dangerous thing in the world to a liar like your husband. Driving back toward Colleen, I stopped for gas. My phone buzzed again. Daniel. Hey, babe, how's the drive? Fine. Still on for dinner. Yeah. Mom and Dad just landed in Seattle. I nearly choked on my coffee. Landed already? Yeah, flight was early. The lie came so smoothly, so effortlessly, no hesitation. I pulled into a parking spot and reopened the driveway footage. The timestamp was unambiguous, at 11:39 a.m. My in-laws had walked into my house. At 11:52 a.m., Daniel texted me they were boarding. Now, 2 hours later, he said they'd landed. 3 impossible stories, 1 confident liar. I started the truck again. Then a new, chilling thought hit me. If he was lying this casually about something I could prove, what else had he hidden? That evening, I logged into our joint investment account for the first time in months. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. Nearly $190,000 was gone. $190,247, $18. It wasn't withdrawn all at once. It was transferred in increments over nearly 8 months. $10,000 here, $15,000 there, $25,000 after Christmas. Each transaction was disguised with bland descriptions like portfolio adjustment. If I hadn't been looking for it, I never would have questioned it. I took screenshots of everything before logging out. I was sitting at the kitchen table, still staring at my phone, when Daniel came downstairs humming. He kissed me on the forehead. You look tired. Want me to make the salmon? I smiled. That sounds nice. The words tasted like ash. For 18 years, I had trusted this man completely. Now I realized I had never known him at all. The next morning, I was back at Linda's office. She had a legal assistant already working on a checklist. We collect facts today, Major. Feelings can wait. It was cold, but it was exactly what I needed. We spent 3 hours going through every account we could think of: checking, savings, retirement, brokerage. Linda frowned more and more with each document. Sarah, has your husband always handled the finances? Mostly. And you trusted him? Completely. She nodded without judgment. That's very common. Then she turned her computer screen toward me. I searched the county property records. 3 properties came up: your home, a rental house, and a lake cabin outside Burnett. I blinked. We don't own a cabin. Linda pointed at the screen. No, but Daniel does. He transferred the cabin to Patricia for $16 weeks ago. $1. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You don't sell a lake house for $1. No, Linda agreed. You hide it. That afternoon, I met Rosa at a small cafe. She looked exhausted. I couldn't sleep, she confessed. I just keep thinking I should have told you sooner. I reached across the table and took her hand. You told me the moment you were sure. That's all I could ever ask for. Her eyes filled with tears. I've worked for your family for 10 years. No, I said firmly. You've worked for me. Life on base continued as if nothing had happened. Morning formations, equipment inspections, endless meetings. One afternoon, a young lieutenant complained about a shipment arriving 2 hours late. I looked at him and realized I couldn't muster the energy to care. Part of my life was in free fall, but the other part just expected me to keep going. The army didn't care about my broken marriage, it just cared about the mission. And I could still perform the mission. That Friday night, Linda called. I've got good news and bad news. Bad first. I believe Daniel intends to file for divorce. And the good? He's already chosen his timing. He's waiting for your 6-week deployment to Fort Irwin next month. I closed my eyes. Of course. He wanted me hundreds of miles away, too overwhelmed to fight back while he stripped the house bare. Linda's voice softened. He has no idea you've already changed the game. For 2 weeks, I lived a double life. At home, I was the dutiful wife, smiling over dinner, listening to him complain about work, and watching television with him at night. Sometimes he'd reach for my hand. I let him. I needed him to keep believing I was clueless. During the day, though, I was a detective. I built a timeline with Linda, every receipt, every bank transfer, every lie. It felt like piecing together a jigsaw puzzle of a photograph I didn't want to see. The turning point came on a Thursday. I found what they've been really hiding, Linda said, her voice grim. I drove straight to her office. She pushed a folder across the table. It was a sworn statement Daniel had filed while refinancing a business loan. Read this. I saw the sentence halfway down the second page. My wife is frequently absent due to military obligations and has effectively abandoned the marital relationship. The words punched the air out of my lungs. I had deployed twice in 18 years. I had never abandoned my family. Linda said, he told the bank you were never home, that he managed the household alone, that he expected the marriage to end years ago. None of it was true. He had been rewriting our history for months, turning me into the villain of a story he was telling the world. That evening, I drove to our church. I didn't go for a service. I just sat quietly in the empty sanctuary. Pastor Davis walked in and saw me. Sarah, he said, smiling warmly. Everything all right? I asked a question that had been eating at me. Has Daniel ever talked to you about our marriage? His smile faded. A little bit. What did he say? He hesitated, but I pressed. He finally sighed. He said military life had changed you. He said you were never home. He asked us to pray that you'd find your way back to your family. The words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just that Daniel had lied to me. He had lied about me to people I respected. The next morning, Linda had more evidence. I found where some of the money went. The lake cabin. Over $140,000 from your investment accounts paid for renovations. She paused. Every invoice was issued before the ownership was transferred to Patricia. I leaned back in my chair. The anger was hot and fierce, but I kept it tamped down. I remembered something a senior NCO once told me. Never move before you understand the whole battlefield. He wasn't talking about marriage, but the advice fit perfectly. That weekend, Daniel suggested we host a barbecue for his parents when they returned from their vacation. I looked him straight in the eye. Sounds nice. Just a minute later, my phone buzzed. It was Linda. Just one sentence. We found someone willing to talk. It's not who you think. I expected Daniel's mistress to be hostile or defensive. Instead, when we finally spoke, her first words were, I've been wondering when you'd find me. Her name was Jessica. She was 39, a pharmaceutical sales rep from Austin, and she sounded exhausted. Linda arranged the meeting at her office. When Jessica walked in, she looked like she might bolt. She stood a few feet away. I'm sorry. I nodded to the chair across from me. Please sit. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Jessica broke the silence. I didn't know. You knew he was married. Yes, but he told me the divorce was finalized last winter. He said you moved on to the base permanently. He said you hadn't shared a bedroom in over 3 years. She pulled printed emails from her purse and placed them on the table. Each one was a lie. He'd been telling so many different stories to different people he'd lost track of them all. Why did he wear the ring? I asked. He said taking it off would be bad for business. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. It was the first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. Jessica smiled weakly. I know how ridiculous that sounds now. No, I said. It sounds exactly like something he'd say. Linda took over, asking for details. When did it start? 11 months ago. Did she meet his parents? Yes, several times. How did he introduce her? As the woman he was going to marry after the divorce. There it was, confirmation. Jessica continued. They invited me to Thanksgiving last year. I slowly lifted my head. Thanksgiving? I had been away at Fort Bliss for emergency flooding relief. Daniel told me his parents were keeping it small. Instead, they had celebrated with her. As painful as it was, something shifted. I stopped seeing Jessica as my enemy. We had both been manipulated by the same man. Linda looked at Jessica. Would you be willing to testify? She didn't answer immediately. Then she nodded. Yes. Why? Jessica looked out the window. Because yesterday I found out he proposed to another woman in Dallas. Linda and I both looked up. Jessica gave a bitter little laugh. I guess neither of us was the only one. He wasn't just running 2 relationships. He was running 3. By early August, Linda had Daniel's depositions scheduled. She gave me one instruction: say as little as possible. The deposition was a plain conference room with buzzing fluorescent lights. Daniel walked in wearing his favorite blazer, the one I'd given him for our anniversary. He smiled like we were meeting for lunch. Sarah, Daniel. His attorney began the routine questioning. Marriage, job, income. Daniel answered with practiced ease. Then Linda stood. Mr. Davis, when did you begin a romantic relationship with Jessica Ryan? Daniel barely blinked. I don't know anyone by that name. Linda slid a photograph across the table. Daniel and Jessica at a farmer's market, holding hands. The timestamp was from 10 months prior. Daniel cleared his throat. She's a client. Linda placed another picture on the table, them at a steakhouse. Another at a hotel. His attorney rubbed his forehead. I may have socialized with her, Daniel admitted. Linda played an audio recording of a phone call. Jessica's voice said, Daniel told me the divorce was finished. Then Daniel's voice, I know, I just haven't taken the ring off yet. The room went silent. The questions continued. Did you transfer the Burnett County cabin to your mother? Yes, for $1. It was a gift. Were marital funds used to renovate it? I don't recall. Linda handed him invoices totaling $140,000, each carrying his electronic signature. I don't recall, he repeated. Then Linda asked, how many romantic relationships were you involved in during the past year? Daniel sighed. 1. At that moment, the conference room door opened. Jessica walked in. Daniel's face went white. I was asked to wait outside, she said calmly. She looked at him for a long time. Then she asked the question I'd wanted to ask. Which one of us were you planning to marry? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. You told me Sarah was gone, Jessica said. And last week you proposed to someone else. His attorney dropped his pen. Even the court reporter paused. For the first time in this entire nightmare, the man who always had an explanation was speechless. The divorce hearing was in early September. I woke before dawn, putting on my Army service uniform with the same care I always did. Every crease had to be perfect. Not to impress them, but because that uniform represented my integrity, something Daniel had tried to destroy. Judge Watkins presided. She was calm, methodical, and had seen it all. Linda called Rosa first. Rosa described returning to the house, hearing voices, and seeing Daniel kissing another woman. She answered every question honestly. When Daniel's attorney suggested she'd misunderstood, she said quietly, I cleaned that house for 10 years. I know the difference between a greeting and a kiss. Then came Jessica. She admitted the affair without making excuses. I believed a man who lied to both of us. Then Linda presented her evidence, photos, emails, financial records. Everything fit together like a page from the same ugly story. Then Linda played the security footage. The courtroom was silent as Daniel kissed Jessica, as Patricia walked in laughing, as the attorney envelope was handed over. The footage was methodical and damning. Daniel took the stand, but Linda tore his testimony apart. "Mr. Davis, why did you text Major Davis that your parents had landed in Seattle when they were eating takeout in her dining room?" He had no answer. Judge Watkins didn't rule immediately. She recessed for lunch. Linda and I walked to a small diner. We sat in silence, sipping sweet tea. I realized then that revenge wasn't my goal anymore. I didn't need Daniel to suffer. I needed the truth to matter. When court resumed, the judge spoke for nearly 20 minutes. She declared the transfer of the cabin a fraudulent conveyance and ordered it reverted to the marital estate. She ordered Daniel to reimburse the missing investment funds. She awarded me the marital home, and she ordered him to pay a substantial settlement and my legal fees. Then she looked directly at my husband. Marriage sometimes fails, but dishonesty is what turned this case into something far more serious. Outside the courthouse, Daniel hurried away without a word. Patricia called after him, but he kept walking. My father-in-law, Robert, approached me. "I should have stopped this, Sarah. I was a coward." I just looked at him. "I hope you find peace." He nodded. "So do I." As we walked to the car, I turned to Linda. "I want to pay off Rose's mortgage." Linda smiled. "I thought you might." A few weeks later, I drove to the airport again to pick up my sister for Thanksgiving. The drive was different this time. My hands weren't shaking. My life had settled into a new rhythm. I still served at Fort Hood, with a promotion and a small office. I still saw Rosa, who insisted on bringing tamales every Christmas. As for Daniel, I stopped checking on him. I heard bits and pieces. His business suffered, his clients left, the lake cabin was sold. I realized I didn't care, and for the first time, I knew it wasn't bitterness. It was freedom. I started volunteering with a support group for military spouses going through divorce. I told my story. Sometimes we laughed, sometimes we cried. One woman asked me how I stopped wanting revenge. "I didn't," I told her. "I just realized revenge wasn't what I really wanted." "What did you want?" "The truth. And once the truth had a chance to speak for itself, I didn't have to carry the anger anymore." When I saw my sister walking out of the terminal, waving her arms, I laughed and waved back. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be, but it was peaceful. I understood something now that I couldn't see in that parking lot when Rosa told me to check the cameras. The video didn't destroy my life. It revealed the truth before I lost even more years to a lie. Sometimes the hardest moments become the ones that quietly set you free. The truth didn't destroy my life. It saved what was left of it. If you've ever had a moment when the truth changed everything, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more stories of resilience and truth. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care of yourself and never underestimate the quiet strength that comes from choosing honesty over anger.